Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and record the video. This should be Azuri Atoll, episode 6, season 1. This is just gonna be about books and basically just ranting about nothing, whatever comes to mind. But it always seems like I feel the most creative at 1 a.m. for some reason. We're gonna talk about this book. Now, I've just started this book, essentially read 30 pages of it. I tend to have a lot of ADHD with books. I've started a lot of books and not finished them. But I do have a list of sci-fi which I've obviously completed, which I feel like are very great books that everyone should read. This one, it's kind of revealed some characters that I like. First character, which is like a villain in his lair, and he has essentially his foes that he's beaten, and he has ways of kind of suspending their life essentially, but having them locked up essentially in these like kind of contraptions where he can beat them up. His name is Luciferius. That introduction was pretty great, like really cool stuff. There's this character who he has captive that essentially is able to regenerate, and so he can continue to punch him, and it seems to become very sadistic, but it's like a very cool character creation. And then it flips to these other characters, which is Uncle Slovius and his nephew Fasten. And these characters are pretty interesting as well. So they kind of have a job which is like, feels almost like some kind of cult, where they have to learn information from these entities that are known as the Dwellers. And these Dwellers are said to live very slow and stuff like that, essentially. But so this book is pretty good. What I've found for myself is that for me to continue reading a book, I need to get invested into it, so I need to give a lot of time to it. There's been books in the past which I haven't finished because I've read like one page in the tube, when really I should be getting invested in the characters. And this book is a bit slower sometimes, even in the introduction, surprisingly, but it seems like a good book, and it seems like it was start to kind of develop. I wanted to talk about this book, which I can actually remember the story. This book, so we have The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut, and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. So I've read both of these books. This book I read pretty long time ago, for like a year ago or something like that, so don't remember it that well, but I remember this being a good book. One thing I can remember, the guy has sex with an android, so that's pretty interesting. This book is pretty cool. It's like one of the characters, as far as I can remember, gets hijacked from Earth and is employed into like the Martian army. And so the Martians are essentially, they have chips inside of their heads to control them, and they can be paused at any time. So it's some very cool concepts in there. And so the Martians go on to invade Earth. So he kind of goes on to invade place he came from, but it's some other more interesting stuff, like a lot more expansive stuff, which I'm not talking about because I don't remember. I read it a long time ago, but I remember this book being awesome, like very, very good. Yeah, so this book is ranked very highly in my opinion. I like it a lot. Yeah, so I'm just looking at the blurb here. So the chronosynclastic infundibulum. So this is like a machine which one of the characters essentially flies into and becomes this kind of I wouldn't say God, but like he knows he becomes pure energy and is able to travel anywhere and know everything that ever existed and know everything that's going to exist. So yeah, again, some really cool stuff. this doesn't rank as highly as another book which I like, which is called The Stars My Destination by Alfred Bester, which I think is a really awesome book. I would definitely recommend that book. I'm just gonna... Yeah, so shifting the subject a little bit, I wanted to talk about my personal attention span and how I noticed that it's affected by different environmental impulses. Like, for example, reading books essentially like slows down the jumpiness of my ADHD, which it allows me to focus longer. One strange thing I've noticed is that I have more dreams when I'm in a state which is slower, which I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. So when I talk about having a slower kind of mentality, what I consider that to be is like being able to focus on long, drawn out projects, in a sense, like painting one piece for a long time and just the same piece only. There's a lot of like social media like TikTok and Instagram, which is like short form media, which is like short videos, and it's punchy, and it changes your brain. Or I feel like it changes my brain, at least, to the point where it's like I may jump to a different subject, even mentally. If I'm talking to someone, my brain goes to something completely different. And so you have this kind of dichotomy of like long form media and short form media. Maybe short form media has some pluses, but it feels that long form media is more useful to someone who wants to devote themselves to something over their life. So if I wanted to devote myself to learning languages, or devote myself to learning mathematics, for example, it feels like long form media, it's better for that. So in a sense, that's not even saying that like media is a bad thing, but that may mean that longer movies are better than, say, like, you know, these short like kind of Instagram things. That maybe we should be watching, you know, movies again. So there's that. So I have a few different hobbies, such as like playing guitar and skateboarding, and I do want to record myself more. I'm not sure why I haven't, to be honest. Sometimes it feels like I'm not skating good enough. However, I've found also that there's no issue with waiting for a trick. Like, you can take 30 minutes, even an hour to get that trick, keep on trying it, falling over. So I just recently watched Richie Jackson's Death Skateboard Spot, and I found that... So I just recently watched Richie Jackson's Death Skateboard Part, and I found that to be really kind of really impressive just in general, and shows kind of how creative you can really get with skateboarding, and also inspiring, because obviously I'll be making videos in the future, and it shows how much stuff you can really skate. It's really nice to find obstacles out, things that maybe you wouldn't generally think, oh, that's for skating, but like you can literally skate anything, and it's so cool. You record it and you have an awesome part where you're skating something which is just totally ridiculous, and watching those videos like Richie Jackson's part, it makes me kind of like think more about the mind to body connection in skateboarding. That like really, okay, you have a skateboard and you're on wheels, but essentially it's just your body. You're jumping onto things, you're like climbing things. The wheels make it cool because you're essentially always falling, that's really cool. You always have gravity on your side, which is I think is an awesome thing, and can make for some pretty cool skate clips. And so ever since I watched that part, I've kind of been skating differently, I feel like, and even just seeing obstacles everywhere. Like everything is skateboard. Like I've been looking at those kind of I don't know if you guys ever seen these like traffic kind of like cones but they like bend. And I was thinking you could probably like ollie onto that, and maybe it bends and then comes back up, pops back up. You know, like a spring or something. It springs back up, and then you do like a trick. But just some like cool stuff I've been thinking about. So, and skateboarding can be like truly mental, and it's interesting the kind of mind to body connection. And if you start maybe thinking a little bit more out of the box, how that can really impact your skating and make it just way cooler. So it was Monday. It's technically Saturday now because it's 1 a.m. So it's yeah, it's pretty damn late. But I just felt a lot of inspiration. I kind of get a lot of inspiration around this time, which is annoying. One thing I've been doing recently is soloing, or basically noodling around on the pentatonic scales to J Dilla beats, and that's been really fun because it's like gives me a chance to essentially play after working. You know, you work and you kind of learn the actual shapes of the scales, and then you can just play around and just start, you know, noodling. But then even I guess your fingers start to become more dexterous. I used to use a pick. However, I found like one time I went to a party, they told me to play guitar. I didn't have a pick. I basically couldn't play guitar, which is kind of ridiculous. But so kind of like lead parts, you know, small little licks and stuff. It's cool to be able to have the speed with your fingers. So I've been playing with my fingers a lot to J Dilla stuff.